Is it possible to get an EIN without a Social Security number, SSN? Have you ever wondered if you can get an employer identification number without a Social Security number? This is a common question, especially for those starting a business in the United States. Let's break down the details so you can understand your options. Yes, it is indeed possible to obtain an employer identification number from the Internal Revenue Service without having a Social Security number. An employer identification number is a federal tax identification number used to identify a business entity for tax purposes. While having a Social Security number can make the process easier, it is not a strict requirement for obtaining an employer identification number. To apply for an employer identification number without a Social Security number, you need to complete Internal Revenue Service Form SS4. This form is the official application for an employer identification number and requires basic information about your business, such as its name, entity type, and location. If you do not have a Social Security number, you cannot apply for an employer identification number online. The Internal Revenue Service online application system requires a Social Security number or an individual taxpayer identification number. Instead, you must submit Form SS4 by mail or fax to the Internal Revenue Service. When filling out form, there is a section that asks for the Social Security number, individual taxpayer identification number, or employer identification number of the responsible party. If you are a non-resident without a Social Security number or individual taxpayer identification number, you should enter foreign in that field. This indicates to the Internal Revenue Service that you do not have these numbers. Once you submit your application, the Internal Revenue Service will process it and typically assign an employer identification number within a few weeks. If you are applying from outside the United States, you can also contact the Internal Revenue Service by phone for assistance with the process. While a United States address is not strictly required to obtain an employer identification number, having one can be helpful for banking and other business needs. Many non-residents use a registered agent's address or a service that provides a United States address for this purpose. If you are not eligible for a Social Security number, you may apply for an individual taxpayer identification number using Form W-7. However, this is a separate process from the Employer Identification Number application. The Employer Identification Number is specifically for business identification, while the Individual Taxpayer Identification Number is for individual tax processing. Obtaining an Employer Identification Number is essential for businesses to hire employees, open bank accounts, and file tax returns. So, if you do not have a Social Security number but wish to operate a business in the United States, you can still obtain an employer identification number by submitting form via mail or fax and entering foreign in the Social Security number field if applicable. This process allows non-residents and others without Social Security numbers to comply with United States tax regulations and conduct business activities legally.